kann leben, wie ich möchte.
Auch wenn das nicht jedem passt.
Hier kommt man damit gut klar.
Woanders gehen wir in den Knast.
Überall Nationalisten.
Auffanglager Mittelmeer.
Mauern,
Panzer,
2 Weltkriege.
lernt was draus.
Ist das so schwer?
Freiheit, Gleichheit, Bürgerrecht, der Weg Europas war nicht leicht. Lasst uns nie mehr Blut vergießen.
Etwas schwarze Tinte reicht.
When COVID, if you go, I think you basically were getting impacted February, March, and now it's June, believe it or not. It's hard to believe it's been 3 months. And but what was your sort of initial, if you go by month, how are you sort of absorbing this and then trying to understand, okay, now this is real, this is impacting us, it's impacting us this way, we have plans to open, but that's to be flexible. So how are you sort of, how's the company, the retail part of it, sort of absorbing it, processing it, and getting it back on its feet?
I think what really made the difference here is that we have a group of family-based shareholders in the company, and I think family businesses tend to make decisions very fast. And so we don't have lengthy processes with board approvals, etc. I mean, obviously, yes, we do have a management board and we have a family board if you want, but we're very closely aligned. And within this family, or the 5 families who own and run Thalia, we have very complementary skills. So we do have one family that has a lot of global retail experience. They've built some of the biggest European retail chains. We obviously have the Herder family. We have a family that brings the IT and primarily the IT knowledge along. And then we have the 2 managing partners, the Bush family, Michael Bush being the CEO of Thalia, who has run and built Thalia now for the last 25 years, who has probably is the most experienced guy in the industry to run a big retail operation, particularly in the book sector. And then the Falter family, who just joined forces with us about 2 years ago with the Meiersche, which is a smaller regional bookstore, but also with 270 years of experience and also very sizable 3-digit million revenue. And those 2 obviously bring the hands-on operational experience to really manage as owners and not only as managers the company through difficult times. And Manuel and I both had experience. He was studying in Japan and has a lot of Asia experience. And I went after my studies at the peak of SARS to China to study Chinese and start working in China. So we both, I think, have been, compared to other people in the industry, quite early on sensitized and had the feeling, okay, something is different and something might hit us here. When we saw the pictures in Italy, Manuel and I were agreeing, okay, this is going to hit us in the rest of Europe. It's not confined to China or to Italy. This is coming. It's going to be in Europe. It's going to be globally. That was a point where the other guys were still taking a wait and see approach and thought we are too cautious and we were worrying too much. But then sort of with the dynamic evolving, they very quickly caught on and said, wow, this is really happening. And we had a crisis board established probably a week or 2 weeks before any other retailer was talking about it. And then it really went, and then sometimes it's lucky coincidences, but Michael Bush actually has military training. He was a military commander before he joined Thalia, and one of his former military people is actually senior manager at Thalia. So that guy had catastrophe management skills, had taken the courses, was still in the sort of civil arm of the German military in charge of catastrophe when there are floodings, etc. So he was put in charge right away to set up a small crisis team around this and basically monitor the situation on a daily basis with a small team. And then we literally pulled together a crisis team and had daily crisis calls, an hour in the morning. We just aligned on the permanently evolving situation. And I think we're very quickly up and running on, okay, we have the information, we have the situation monitoring in place, we have contingency plans in place. Obviously, even though we had everything in place, the speed and the momentum of the impact we didn't expect. So we were taken by surprise on how quickly we went from, okay, we have the infrastructure in place to complete shutdown of 400 stores in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And then obviously, we're still planning on, okay, if a shutdown should happen, what type of communication will we have in the stores? And within 2 days, we got the information on a Tuesday that we had actually the first Corona case. Somebody was in for training from Austria, from our Austria shops at the headquarter in Hagen. Then we did the contact tracing and realized, okay, first and second degree contacts within our headquarter, already 70 plus people. That we realized on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're talking about it. On Friday, we decided, okay, the impossible is going to happen for us now. We've sent everybody to home office for the next week, just to make sure that we sort of have a minimum distance, a minimum quarantine, not to have infect the entire staff that we have at the headquarter with about 600-700 staff. And we switched to home office from it's not possible to now everybody's in home office within 24 hours. And that was before the actual store shutdown happened. And then the store shutdown happened very quickly. We got the information that Austria is considering shutting down completely on a Thursday. It was, okay, this might happen. On Monday, it was confirmed in Austria that stores have to be closed on Tuesday. And then within another 3 or 4 days, we had to close down the stores in Germany and then Switzerland as well. So the situation evolved extremely quickly. We managed the shutdown. And I think one of the aspects that helped us quite a bit was Amazon announcing that books are non-strategic and they would focus on household goods and more important goods needed, which obviously gave us a small advantage over a lot of other retailers, that we were the only one being able to deliver in this German-speaking region in a fairly reasonable amount of time, books and everything book related. And so we were able to compensate some of the losses we had from our retail operations through increased online sales. But nevertheless, I mean, it took us with a tremendous momentum and tremendous impact. And then the length of the shutdown, obviously you have to start into negotiating the rents with the landlords. The German government does have something, it's a standardized short labor program, which has been very quickly expanded by the German government. So we could actually send all of our store related staff into short labor and sort of shut down the stores, make sure that everything is in running order for reopening, but then decreased our staff levels to basically focusing on key staff who were working remotely, particularly in the online area and business continuity management, and managed to decrease the staff costs for that time because it's taken over by government. Obviously, talk to our landlords, try to find solutions for that, and then try to, as quickly as possible, ramp up our online sales. And then the biggest bottleneck was actually the logistic capacities. So obviously, all the major logistics companies were completely overrun by the demand for logistics for parcel services then. And then we started reshuffling and trying to get ship from store going again and adjust our IT processes that from the stores that had sort of the right infrastructure, we could start shipping and serving our customers from them. All in all, I think obviously the impact was drastic. However, sort of within these extremely fast evolving and dynamic Corona fallouts happening, I think we mastered reasonably well, and the team did a tremendous job to really use online to compensate for as much as we could. And then everybody really pulled together in this completely new sort of setup with home office, etc. So it's a tremendous job the entire Thalia team did here.
Last time you talked about what you were doing to help the local merchants on the platform, and I thought that was really it speaks to sort of a good corporate DNA, trying to serve the greater good, but also really practical. If you have a second, can you just explain what you did there with your platform? Yeah.
Basically, what we really came to realize very quickly once the shops were closed down, and I mean, all of you had the same experience walking through an inner city where all shops are closed. It suddenly feels empty, it feels scary. It shows you what happens if we all only start shopping online, what our inner cities will look like. And obviously, the answer of inner cities and big shopping centers was to create more events, to have food courts in place, to have nice restaurants, to have basically have the experience in the city, draw the people into the city and into the shopping centers, and then still sort of give shops the opportunity to have footfall and sell their goods and products. And with that observation, we thought, okay, if there's a time to educate the consumer that if you only shop online, there's not going to be an inner city anymore, it's now. So we decided to launch a platform really sort of with a very startup entrepreneurial approach. And the CEO of Thalia, Michael Busch, had the idea. We said, okay, we need to demonstrate to people that they can do something if they want to support their local retailer, if they want to support their local environment and keep the shops open, or at least keep the shops alive to open again after Corona, then educate the consumer that there are other options on the 2 or 3 major shopping platforms that you can think of, because most of these small shops actually have their website. You just don't remember to go to it because it's so convenient to buy on the 2 or 3 shops where you always shop. And so we launched the website. It's called Shop daheim, which in German means shop at home. And I said, okay, despite the fact that we obviously have an interest to put our 400 Thalia shops on it, Michael immediately had the idea to say, okay, we put every bookstore in the German market on that website. And he liaised with the big sort of service providers for the other bookstores and told them, okay, we want to move quickly with it. So if somebody wants to opt out, they can opt out, but everybody's in. So we just took all the shop websites, all the shop addresses of every independent bookstore, of all the other chains, and 2 of the other smaller local regional chains in Germany already had agreed to join in. And we said, okay, let's take that from bookstores and open it up to all the other retailers. And obviously all these local marketplaces try to make a living on it. That's the reason why a lot of people don't get published. And we said, okay, we invested whatever the first 6-digit figures to make this happen, and we provided the infrastructure. We do that basically pro bono. And if any one of the guys who joined afterwards saw that they really had an uplift on their shopping through that website that we launched, we asked them not to give us money, but to help another Corona initiative in their region with some money, with a donation, whatever they can. I mean, every retailer is struggling right now, but we'll try to make it a grassroots movement to make sure that other people are empowered. And if somebody's benefiting from it and can, then they should empower other smaller initiatives again in their local region. And we had a lot of positive media feedback on it. Some of the big media players in Germany jumped on it. The Funke Group, the Axel Springer Group, which one is in West Germany, one is the biggest German-based media group with the Bild magazine. And they gave us a lot of positive publicity on it and gave us free advertisement for it, because I said it's great. I mean, we do need local retail. Those are the guys advertising in our newspapers, so let's support them as well. And then other media players joined in as well. Logistics companies approached us to join as well. Intersport, which is the biggest accumulation of independent sports shops, joined as well. So it really became a momentum. And now I think we have about 10,000 shops on it, which is fantastic for sort of an independent grassroots movement where we have 2 or 3 project managers working on it. And otherwise, it's literally word of mouth and people really communicating about it and wanting to join in. And hundreds of thousands of visitors actually use that website. And that was the real aim for us to really empower the consumer to shop locally.
So what have you learned, I guess, from this? You know, if you can put A, B, C, D, E, F, or 1, 2, 3, or another way to ask it is, if we get COVID-20, hopefully we don't after COVID-19, what's the, what would you do differently, or what would you do the same? In more of a, because many of the people here are at various stages, Brazil, South Africa, and Mexico, China. And so we think it's very helpful to know, you know, so what are the principles of what are the lessons learned from COVID-19? What would you do again? What would you do differently? And suggestions on best practices.
I think what really helped us is when you talk about emergency measures, it's very often a theoretical exercise. Very few companies, including us, have these mechanisms in place. Or if you do it sort of half-hearted, okay, you have a data protection officer who's sitting somewhere in the closet rather than being empowered. And I think what really helped us was that once we turned the switch around, we did crisis management board, and that crisis management board is taking all decisions from now. Around any major decision was run through the crisis team. We're completely empowered. The CEO is sitting on the board. We're dedicated crisis managers. I, as the chairman of the supervisory board, was sitting on the board. So there was no delay in terms of decision making. There was no waiting for board meetings, etc. And when we had decisions that were not operational but sort of went into the shareholders, we had a shareholder call prepared on 48-hour notice, decision-making documents prepared, and then we could take or make the decisions and really run with it at an operational level. The second part is obviously being remote enabled throughout the entire organization. Again, after what we all experienced, when people were still talking about quarantining or not, and shutting down the offices or not, we had made that decision. We moved to 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We had just sort of started debating whether we should do 50% or 1/3 at the office. Then we had this case, had to isolate 72 people. And we said, okay, nobody at the office. And then we did alternating teams where we said in part of the company, we did 50% teams, and in the other part, we did 1/3. But I think having that rhythm that half of the staff is coming in the 1 week, and then you have the weekend before and the weekend after. So there's a high likelihood that A, any area within the 2 days weekend is decontaminated by the time. B, you always have one team that can stay operational. Even if you have a case in the team, you always have a fallback in the other team, and ideally you structure the teams like that. That's something we have in place and that we live. Obviously, all the hygiene equipment. I mean, what we all learned was sanitizer, face masks, gloves, everything was sold out to storage now, and that's basically a safety well, insurance you have to pay for now with what we have learned. Taking the learnings that we had running under difficult conditions with Corona, seeing where we had hiccups, and that's what we're doing right now, doing a full review of what needs to be improved, that if we have another shutdown, or if we do have another, even if it's not a shutdown, but sort of a pulled handbrake where we have implications, and to really have these processes, have these procedures in place that we could know, okay, what can we switch, what can we do, how can we interact? And then the last part, which we are now getting into place, is obviously all the stuff where you're like, okay, we have to get the contact details of customers, we have to try to get their opt-in, etc. Where before it was always a nice to have, now it's a need to have. There's no excuse anymore. If you want to be in touch with your customers, you have to know your customer. So we're at a point where everybody in the stores has understood what we did online, what we did with telephone marketing. That was our lifeline for the stores. That's the reason why when a lot of other retailers now really get into serious trouble, we are still doing obviously within the limits of Corona, but we're doing reasonably well. And I think that now the last person in the organization has understood, and then making sure that contracts are more flexible, contracts have pandemic clauses, not only epidemic clauses, make sure that all your contracts are in place, that you really can lower your fixed costs if you have to. And that will be a challenge over the next couple of years. And that will be a big challenge in the entire retail sector. You will face situations where you have a lot less footfall, e.g. you will make a lot less revenue. How do you readjust those contracts in the long term that you can sustain your business, that you manage to survive on decreased revenues?
It's so interesting. You may have just launched a new business. You're connecting all the bookstores in the marketplace. Maybe that already is your new business. Maybe you have a new business model, as you said, sort of an organization that can flex up or flex down based on, based on that. Maybe you have a new way of operating, sort of weekly scrum meetings versus quarterly board meetings. There's just so much to learn, and to learn what didn't work and what did work, and re-engineer your business.
I think what we realize now is that what happened with Corona is a fast forward by 5 years of trends and mega trends we saw anyways coming. The scary part is we don't have 5 years to prepare anymore. It's happening in the next 12 months. And that will impact all parts of the retail sector in terms of industry consolidation, in terms of move and shift towards online, and people who've started shopping online, they will continue to shop online. And I think it would be very optimistic to hope that we come back to pre-Corona levels in terms of footfall, in terms of spending per se, but also spending in inner cities and shopping centers, etc. So it is now the right time to make radical changes to business models and really adopt the business models, because if you don't do it now, there most likely is not going to be a chance to get it done later.
We call this a light switch inflection point. In other words, the switch is up, it's changed. Normally, when the printing press, as you know, or radio or TV or internet or mobile, these take 50 years, 60 years, 20 years, 10 years. This is over. And this is the inflection point's here. So, and the challenge for a lot of businesses is our normal, not normal, but a way to think would be, well, this will get better when the vaccine is here, or this will get better when it's a sunny day, or it will get better when the temperatures are over 80 degrees. That's the challenge. So I think the thing that we try to emphasize with people is that it's a light switch. It's already happened. We're in a new age. Yeah. Adjust to it, accept it. And one of the things we're trying to do with these talks is to just let other people know what's going on, because if we do better in the US, that helps Germany. If Germany does better, it helps China. Like, we're all in a unique situation where we can actually share information that's going to be useful for everyone. And everybody's got something brilliant. The Chinese are tremendous. They're geniuses at scale and using mobile. The Brazilians are geniuses at creativity and using almost nothing to come up with the most brilliant idea. So I think among the whole world, the world tends to think of itself as a US retailer or a German retailer or a Chinese retailer. But at this moment in time, we're all in the same boat. We got to figure this thing out. And some of the things you've done have been outstanding. And it's inspirational too. It's also validating, because, well, if you can do it, then why can't I do it? Or why, so, yeah.
Last year, we had the 100-year anniversary of Thalia. And around this 100-year anniversary, we did launch a much more broader campaign where we, again, used the platform approach and said to publishers, hey, why don't you piggyback on our campaign? But we also opened it to other bookstores and gave them, basically against a very small license fee, also the campaign motives. And the head slogan of the campaign is "World Stay Alert" or "World Stay Awake." And we try to position ourselves to current also political affairs. And I think that really paid off now during Corona with the Shop Daheim platform. It's a good example. Or at the end of the day, if we don't take responsibility for the community, nobody else will. Footfall is down between 40 and 50% across retail or shop categories, across retail sectors, and it's not going to come back. And if you look at the consumer sentiment studies, consumers, at least 1/3 of them, are saying, A, they want to spend less, B, they don't like to go to events anymore where they have increased crowds. And all of us retailers, we make our money on Thursday nights, Friday nights, on weekends, and during peak seasons. So
Yeah,
those are not going to come back, at least not in the foreseeable future.
we're a little bit behind the Chinese right now. So, but what you'll see is, what you should see, as we discussed last time, it was 30% when retail first opened. It's up to about 70 now with the restaurants as well. So there's a bit of a lag, and hopefully that the Chinese model will sort of lend itself to be good. So in 60 days, you should be in a much happier place if we follow the Chinese model. I love that there are a number of companies. Tiffany is one, Brooks Brothers is another one, Nordstrom is yet another one, but Herta being founded in 1801, it's been around for a while now. And
good 200 years, yeah.
There you go. So it's not, and I think the closest one to you is Brooks Brothers. They've been around for 220 years. So, so why are you still around? And the question really is, it's the culture. I believe it's the culture of curiosity and the culture of I would say never being satisfied, or never being, never settling for, never being driven by success, but not infatuated by success, because success can kill a company faster than anything else. So there's a culture at Herta that's just interesting, because why are you around for 200 years? And so if you answer that question, there's a lot of insight there.
If you look at Manuel Herta, which is who is the owner of Herta company, he's a 7th generation entrepreneur, right. And it's still 100% family. Or Herta, the group is still 100% family owned, and they don't think in short term. They think in long term. They think over generations, and they want to preserve the entrepreneurial heritage they have. And I think that's amazing. And I think what really amazes me, I met Manuel about good 10, 12 years ago now, while I was doing business in China and he was doing business in China. And he is somebody who's genuinely curious to come up with new ideas and new business cases. And he puts a trust into people to say, okay, let's do this together and let's run together. And we've built a number of very successful companies now throughout the last 10, 12 years. And the way the group has grown over the last 10, 12 years shows that is exactly the right direction. Taking a long-term perspective, investing into people, and sort of using the old assets that the company has to make new ideas happen.
I wrote basically 8 success factors, and one of them is the ability to change. Because if you can change, you can see opportunities. The other is to hire the right people, obviously, and then training of the people. So, so all those elements, all those elemental parts of success are inherent in Herta. So therefore, you were here for 200 years. If one were missing, maybe not so. Maybe 50 years. But good. But what I liked about this particular CEO I spoke to last week was he very much had Walt Disney had a way of thinking. And first, he basically, when he created animation, he actually had people animating during the day and a class at night learning, because animation was something that didn't exist. And so he was endlessly curious, and thus 75 years ago, things are going well at the Walt Disney Company. This particular CEO had a similar characteristic that Herta has, basically, in that very curious and always thinking about the next thing, and thinking about the next 10 years versus the next 10 minutes. Yeah.
And I think seeing problems and wanting to solve these problems is one part of that curiosity that really drives the progression of the company. I mean, that's what we did in the kindergarten or nursery space now. We saw the problem, put resources at it, and then once it was sort of ripe to really create a new business out of it, put an entrepreneurial team on it and let it run with it. But the same applied to, for example, Pondus, which is one software that is basically, it's the back end of publishers to take the book from an author who comes in with a script and wants to get it published throughout the entire creation process that the publisher is doing, working with the author until it's finally published as ebook, as physical book, or as audiobook, etc. So the entire value chain is covered in that software. And when we decided to embark on that journey with the founders of Pondus, it's a group of entrepreneurs, the software wasn't ready to serve a big publishing house yet. But we had the problem that we needed a new generation of software for Herder. So basically said, okay, guys, you get the mandate to implement your software where we know that it's not 100% ready yet, but it's the best what we find in the market. And we at the same time do a capital round with you guys. We give you the money to develop the missing links, and you have the first big contract to really start growing that company together with us. And now this company is serving probably about 60 to 70% of the published novels in the German-speaking market, and has clients like Macmillan and Holzbring rolling out the solution globally. And that's a small entrepreneurial team. But again, the software as a service concept where we saw, okay, what is lacking is innovation in that space. We do need a step change, and we need to solve our own problem, and we can market it B2B to other companies. And when the private equity company Advent International was selling Thalia off from its portfolio, that they, even though Herder is a relatively small company compared to a big retail company like Thalia, they saw that we have the capabilities along the value chain to really make changes in the entire value chain of the German-speaking publishing industry. And I think that is the amazing capability to have that vision and to really embark on that journey.
It goes back to the ability to change, going back to 1801, because it's inherent in the organization to change and to communicate and to make decisions quickly. Your decision-making is really, it's a standard, because I know very few companies are like that.
The distribution of work between Herder and me is that I'm the managing partner in that smart mobile factory business. And we have an operational CEO, and he and I manage a company, which is one of the leading German app agencies specialized on retail apps primarily, and mobile commerce for retail companies, other startup companies or software companies that we're involved in.
It seems the smart mobile seems very well placed because of what's going on in the market in terms of connecting the customers with the retailers. So hopefully it's an investment that's paying off well now.
We are very happy with it. Particularly, it's a mega trend. So for the last 5 to 10 years, basically the shift was from desktop to mobile and app-based commerce. So obviously being on the forefront for some of the biggest German retail groups developing technology across platforms does help in our ongoing discussions we have at Thalia, obviously, because we can exchange obviously best practices and learn from each other. And it basically comes together with our platform philosophy that we have at Herder and also at Thalia. We say, okay, obviously there are some restrictions in terms of competitors, but at the end of the day, we all try to get better in mobile commerce and app-based commerce. And Smart Mobile Factory really is helping us a lot there. And then, for example, we have one project within Herder, which is also the market leader in all types of preschool education, where we basically serve all the nurseries and kindergartens with a lot of the today is still primarily print-based products that educators in nurseries and kindergartens need. And we digitalize that. And the vision behind it is to create the Google Suite for nurseries. and really have made excellent progress. And that software obviously also comes from Smart Mobile Factory. So there's a very broad array of expertise within our software team there. We built for Telecom and Strato, we built the equivalent of the German Dropbox. So also very sophisticated, security-related software development. Very happy with the work the guys are doing.
It's so interesting because what you're doing with Smart Mobile can also apply to business learning. It can apply to almost, and a trend that we're beginning to see in retail, but it's very early. It's actually not a new trend, but it's, are you familiar with QVC or HSN? They're shopping networks in the US. They've done a brilliant job of developing that marketplace, and so one of the CEOs that we'll be featuring is actually building a studio so that he can explain the products. His products are very technical in nature, so and they're very eclectic. So it's really in business, it depends on how you define yourself. And I worked at a company called Discovery, which is Discovery Channel, and you've got that in Germany. And I worked with the CEO, and he said, when I define myself, I define Discovery, it's a content company that lives on all platforms. So,
makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Right. So it really depends on. So what I love about what you're doing with Smart Mobile is that it's really, it's serving a function, but it's actually serving a bigger function, which is how does software work with human engineering?
I think it's thinking entire value chains end to end, and not only focusing on a small bit, but seeing how you can actually improve and take the friction out of a value chain.
Yeah.
And obviously with Herder, we do serve that market, or Herder has been serving that market for decades now, and they're the market leader in that market. So why wait for a startup to innovate if you basically have the market leadership, you have the rights and licenses, you have the tech capabilities. It was only a question of finding the right entrepreneurial guys to actually say, okay, let's make this happen, and take that part out, and found Kitalino to really serve that market, but use the capabilities that we have within the Herder group, which is Smart Mobile, and also obviously some brilliant guys who have the content and have developed the content that educators need.